ZeroState with Jack Lloyd, where philosophy matters.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? So we have a 7th episode today of the ZeroState show here with your host, Jack Lloyd. And before we get into our guest, just a quick announcement, a quick reminder that the I Did Not Consent music video campaign is about to wrap up within less than 24 hours. It's actually, I think, going to end about 3 a.m. tonight on the Eastern Coast front. So if you haven't already, be sure to check that on out. There is still a lot of wiggle room to go in terms of getting the production up. We did hit the minimum goal level for getting our core production elements in terms of the production company and getting studio space and things like that. But we want to take it to the next level if we can. So again, check it on out. There's a link below in the comments, and you'll be able to see what we're up to and hopefully help close it out really nice and get to that funding level. Lets us make a mainstream competitive production. And without further ado, now I'm going to be bringing in my special guest, Ryan Griggs, who is the founder of Griggs Capital Strategies. He's an Austrian economist. He's an advocate for the Nelson Nash's infinite banking concept, and he actually provides a lot of financial solutions for people in this concept, this field of thought. And an extra special note, he also happened to be one of my groomsmen, which makes him extra special and extra awesome. So without further ado, again, here is Ryan. Ryan, how's it going?
What's up, Jay? I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I love it when I get to bring on a guest who is extra special to my heart. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be here. When the invitation came in, I'm like, yeah, sure. In fact, I didn't know, as you know this, I didn't know it was going to be live, but hey, it's all good,
It's all good. Live for me is the best. You just get to see what happens, and whatever happens, happens. You know what I mean? So already there was actually some people asking online what it is that you do with the infinite banking concept and how this connects to, Austrian economics and these amalgamations of fields of thinking about economics and then applying it. Could you explain a little bit about your history and how you came to really value Austrian economics and think about how to apply it in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, I'm an economist by training. So I have a bachelor's and master's in economics. I did a year of a PhD program in agricultural and applied economics at Texas Tech with full funding from their Free Market Institute. I left that program early before getting the PhD in 2017 and then got into the business that I'm in now in October of 2017. In fact, I just had a call just before we got on with a client who was asking me very similar questions. So I had good prep. And he wanted to know about my school background. And his question was, did you find out about this Austrian economic stuff in college? And I'm smiling because of course not. Austrian economics is not taught in the Western university system. In my opinion, what I would call Misesian, like fundamental hardline Austrian economics is not taught anywhere in any school at any level in any sort of systematic fashion. You might get a professor who can do an elective here or there, and you might get exposed to some of it, maybe at like a handful of colleges, right? Like Loyola with Walter Block in New Orleans, or George Mason, or Texas Tech, even Cal State, San Jose in California used to have a bit of a free market flavor that people could elect to do. But you can't go get a degree in Austrian economics anywhere in the U.S., certainly. And maybe even, well, that's not true. University of Francisco Marroquin in Guatemala has a PhD in Austrian economics. In fact, I'm this close to doing it. They've invited, like I've been accepted, and Bob Murphy would be my dissertation advisor in that, but I've yet to begin that program. So anyway, back to my history. Trained as an economist, of course, encountered Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul, now retired, now does the Liberty Port with his co-host Dan McAdams. Came across his speeches on the congressional floor and also his debate appearances for the 2008 presidential election. Found all this on YouTube when I was at NYU in 2010. And that was my entry point, right? As it is for many people. Eventually found LouRockwell.com, and LouRockwell.com led to Mises.org, which led to Murray Rothbard, maybe the most important Austrian economist since Mises, since Ludwig von Mises. And it was off to the races from there. I've interned at the Ludwig von Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. That was in the summer of 2013. Oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago now. On the first floor of the Mises Institute, there's the Wolf Library. And in Wolf Library is Murray Rothbard's private book collection. And you can go and you can open the books and see all of his chicken scratch scribbles throughout. Well, when I was an intern at the Institute, I was the one who brought those books from the third floor in storage in boxes to that library where they sit today. And also participated in the Mises University program, passed their exam, passed the oral exam with honors. Tom Woods was, I don't know if he remembers, but Tom Woods, Jeff Herbener, and I think it was Tom DiLorenzo was my the panel of 3 judges for that. So that was all very cool. And I just continued. You know, I thought I wanted to be a professor of economics. I had this fantastical idea that I could teach actual Austrian economics in an American university classroom. And that's false. And so and I started to learn more about what it really looks like to be a professor of economics in that year at Texas Tech, right? That 2016-17 academic year. By this time, I had already met Nelson Nash. Nelson Nash is the founder and creator of the infinite banking concept. He wrote a book called Becoming Your Own Banker, and he really started a whole financial movement, which we can get into, I'm sure. But I had already met him in 2016, in May of that year, just before I entered the PhD program. And I had already adopted, to the best of my ability at the time, I've since become much better, but I started to dabble in, let's say, the IBC in my own life. And as my education progressed, well, I'll give you the real story. Bob Murphy, PhD, NYU, very prominent Austrian economist, Contra Krugman, your people know who he is. He was a visiting assistant research professor at the Free Market Institute at Texas Tech. Because of his particular position and his association with the FMI, he did not have a teaching load. So I couldn't go take a class with Bob Murphy. So here I am at the Free Market Institute trying to study economics. Bob Murphy's on faculty and I can't go take a class with him. It irritates me to this day. And so I approached Bob myself and said, this is crazy. Can we at least do like a book club or a reading group and just meet outside of all the normal channels? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we read a few books, among them Karl Menger's Principles of Economics, and another by Larry White, his History of Economic Thought book. I forget the exact title. But we would meet once a month. We'd read a few chapters and we'd discuss them. These were not very well attended sessions. On about half of them, I was the only one there, which doesn't bother me, right? I get a private 2 to 3 hour reading session once a month with Bob Murphy. Hello, I'm fine with that. But on a few sessions, other students came wisely. But I mentioned we read Karl Menger's Principles of Economics. Well, and this was released by the Mises Institute. And in the introduction, which is written by Friedrich Hayek, Nobel Prize winner, and I will call him an Austrian fellow traveler, he mentions in one little paragraph that in the Principles of Economics, Karl Menger does not use his later conception of capital. Right? In Principles of Economics, there's a footnote. That footnote is very long. It was transferred over into the body of the book, which you would now read. So you wouldn't know it was a footnote unless you read the background here. But in that little section, Menger uses a physical, homogeneous definition of capital, right? The structure of production that's ordered through in stages, right? From very remote from the consumer, right? The mining of the raw materials, all the way to the bottom of the structure, or the most close to the time of consumption, when the final product is purchased by a consumer. And that big footnote, grew up to become what is now considered Austrian capital theory. So if you go to watch Mises University videos on YouTube, you'll find Roger Garrison doing a lecture on Austrian capital theory, where he's saying that the Austrian view of capital is that capital is the structure of production. It's physical. I'm sorry, I said earlier it's homogeneous. I meant to say heterogeneous. It's, in other words, these various things that constitute the structure, the factories, the roads, the trucks, the materials, all of these things are denominated in irreconcilable units, right? Pounds versus tons versus kilowatts, right? They're fundamentally heterogeneous, irreconcilable categories of things. And that's developed into Austrian capital theory. Well, going back to this introduction by Hayek in Principles of Economics, he alludes to this idea that Menger would later have a different conception of capital. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? So I did a little research and so Principles of Economics was written in 1871. Come to find out in 1888, 17 years later, Menger wrote a 52-page article called Zur Theorie des Kapitals in German, or Towards a Theory of Capital, or On Capital. It's translated differently by different people. But essentially a 52-page article wherein he evaluates the various conceptions of capital and just brutally eviscerates them, including the one that says capital is the heterogeneous structure of production. Like what? How? The founder of the Austrian School of Economics is saying that what Austrian capital theory is today is not capital. Because my mind's blown, right? So I get into this. Fast forward into the future, I later had that 52-page art. I commissioned the translation of that article, and it's done. I have it in English. There's a professor called Ed Braun, B-R-A-U-N, at a Catholic university in Germany. And there's another fellow named Greg Hodgson, who's in the UK, a very prominent historian of economic thought. They have noticed, two people, have noticed that Menger later had a different idea of what capital is, and they have independently commented on and translated portions. And I've communicated with them both over email. But as far as I know, the English translation I have is the only one where we know the copyright origin. And like I'm trying to get it published, but believe it or not, it's difficult to get it published. I may just post it myself. But anyway, long story short, Menger's later conception of capital, where he really thoroughly exposited what his view came to be, is that capital is not the heterogeneous structure of production. It's not physical. It's not the stuff. It's not the stuff we use to make other stuff. It's not that. He said, no, capital is the monetary value of assets. So it's what the stuff is worth in money terms, right? So in that later Menger 1888 view, capital is homogeneous because it's all denominated in money, right? And these different things valued in money, now these money sums, these money accounts can be reconciled. So it's a homogeneous, reconcilable, abstract view of capital, rather than the physical, heterogeneous view that everybody thinks. Okay, so I'm going through all of this in the PhD program in this reading group with Bob. I've already met Nelson. I've already been practicing. Come to find out, oh my gosh, I've got it sitting right here. Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. 92-page book. 73 times the word capital appears. In 72 of those 73 times, the view of capital is financial. And it hit me like Nelson used to say, IBC is more caught than it is taught. And when he figured it out, it was like a 2x4 across the forehead. And for me, it was the same thing. It was like a 2x4 across the forehead. Oh my gosh. Nelson Nash is teaching people how to implement true Austrian capital theory as Menger, the founder of the Austrian school, described it in their own lives. And so what that means personally, practically today, is that the infinite banking concept is a financial strategy. It's a capitalization strategy. It's a method of systematically accumulating capital, accumulating monetary value in an optimal form, right? And we can talk about what optimal means, right? We would want certain things if we're going to build up a bunch of capital. We'd like the value to grow every year uninterrupted, right? We'd like to have a compounded growth effect. We'd like to utilize that purchasing power that we've accumulated without subtracting from its value, without interrupting the compounding growth process. And the IBC teaches that there's a way to do that through a leveraging, through a borrowing process. Nelson would say in very simple terms that the infinite banking concept is how you solve for the banking function. It's how you opt out of the evil, immoral, inefficient, fractional reserve banking system, right? It's how you accumulate capital that can be used without participating in the fraudulent counterfeit money creation system that we have across the globe. He would later call it that IBC is a personal monetary system. And so that's what I do. And I don't shy away from this. It involves the sale and the purchase of life insurance. I know it blows people's mind, right? And people think of life insurance, they think of death benefit. And that's true. Life insurance involves a death benefit. But a certain kind of life insurance, namely dividend-paying whole life insurance, of course, has a death benefit, but it also has a capital component or an equity component. And dividend-paying whole life is a private asset owned by you. There's no IRS reporting, government involvement, no credit reporting, no reporting to credit agencies. So it's a private asset in which you can systematically accumulate capital over the course of your lifetime and then go use it for whatever you want. It's as far as I know, the only strategy that professes to be a capitalization strategy. And if there are others, this one's the best because dividend-paying whole life is the only asset where the value is guaranteed to rise every year. That doesn't happen. And everywhere else, the value of something is only worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it. And you don't know what people are going to, future's uncertain. We don't know what people are going to pay for things. Well, in life insurance, because the death benefit is guaranteed, so too is this capital component, which is called cash value. And so consequently, it's the only asset where we can systematically accumulate capital on a guaranteed basis in an asset that we own and control. So it's a lot of people. It's a lot of things to a lot of people. In Nelson's book, he uses many examples. Funding education expenses. There's a whole section on equipment financing, right, for a business owner financing equipment. Some people think of it as a method of planning for retirement. Nelson did not like the word retirement, but late life passive cash flow, you can call it. So it's a lot of things to a lot of people, but economically and based on my training and background, it's a capitalization strategy. And who wouldn't? You've never heard of an overcapitalized business. Nobody has too much access to money. Right? It's like, okay, well, if having a lot of capital would be a good thing, it might be a good idea to have a strategy to accomplish that. And that's what the IBC is. Long answer to a very short question, but that's it.
Well, I appreciate the long answer because for a lot of people who are in the liberty sphere, a common trope is the idea that people know about the Fed, they know about the fractional reserve banking, the printing, this or that. They understand how government intervention causes serious problems and misallocation, but they themselves are not really great at making money, right? There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I know the theory.
Hey, you said it, not me.
It's what it is. So it's true. It's true. A lot of people can get into the theory, they're excited about it, they understand it in an abstract academic sense, but applying it for themselves, it can be tough. Having those skills, whether it's entrepreneurship or investment, whatever, or capital building, it's tough, right? It's especially tough. And I think there's a part to it that is just once you're that awakened to the system, sometimes it's just hard to engage with it, or you might feel defeated about it. But again, there's ways to get around it, as you just said, and to think about how you can accumulate your capital and provide yourself savings for the future. So for a layperson, which I think a lot of people who are watching this are going to be kind of wondering, what does he mean here by, having this life insurance and capital accumulation? Like, what does that look like in practical terms? Would you be able to explain for someone who's, relatively new to this, what that actually looks like for them and a kind of an example and how that plays out?
Yeah, well, I'll try to make it as practical as I can. I'll give you an example of just how somebody would ever come to me to get started, right? Like what? Okay, so these people who are my clients have heard about IBC somewhere. They heard it on a podcast. The guy I was talking to this morning wanted to get into real estate investing, and somebody on a real estate podcast mentioned, that the very wealthy build up a lot of cash value in life insurance. And by the way, I want to say that this is not for the wealthy. I mean, wealthy people can do it. Don't get me, they should do it. Everybody has a need for capital, right? If you are making more money than you're spending, which you should be, then you're accumulating capital somewhere, right? It's probably for people starting out, it's probably in the form of a checking account balance at a bank. And by the way, that bank pays dividends to somebody. It probably just ain't you. And the reason it's not you is because you don't own the bank, right? There is a profit generated. There's a financial surplus generated and distributed to individuals because of the performance of the banking function. And I mean banking in the very general sense, the provision of credit, right? That's happened. That business happens, and it is a business. It generates a profit. That profit gets distributed. Most people just aren't familiar with that fact because we're not in the position to own the banking function, right? So again, the point is you don't have to be hyper rich to do this. I have clients who pay $50 a month. I got clients who pay $250,000 a year. Okay, it's all over the map. When I started in 2016, I was a student working 3 nights a week at a restaurant, paid $70 a month in my first policy. Okay, so you don't have to be wealthy to do this. But the way people come to me, and I'm just one example. There's other agents. You can go to infinitebanking.org, infinitebanking.org, which is the website for the Nelson Nash Institute, a board member and co-founder of which, by the way, is Robert Murphy. Hello, one of the biggest economists in Austrian economics, is a co-founder and board member of the Nelson Nash Institute. Okay, it should be an indication that maybe there's something to this, right? So you can go there. They have what's called a practitioner finder. The Nelson Nash Institute has a program called the Authorized IBC Practitioner Program. These are people like myself, licensed life insurance agents, who go through an initial interview, an exit interview, and a series of coursework and an exam in between to make sure that they have a minimum threshold understanding of what the heck is going on here. And then those people, once they get through the program, are listed on this finder, and anybody can go look at, you can search by state, you can search by last name. If you go there, you type in Griggs, Griggs, you'll find me. Okay. So I'm just one example. The point is there's other agents out there, but somebody who comes to me will have heard about IBC somewhere. They'll go online, as we all do, to do our research, and they'll go on YouTube, and eventually they will come across a podcast called Banking with Life. Banking with Life is a podcast that I co-host with my business partner and mentor, James Neathery, Neathery. James and I are very close. March of this year will be 3 years that podcast has been running. It's the longest running podcast with the highest number of hours of content on it about the IBC in particular. And, look, this is if you're considering which financial strategy to adopt in your lifetime, you're going to do your research. And so people go and they'll watch a lot of this. They'll watch a lot of the podcast. And they'll read Nelson's book, and they'll be like, okay, I want to do this. And so they'll go through a life insurance policy purchase process. So I'm an agent. They'll contact me. We got to handle quite a bit of general education, advisory stuff on the front end. But eventually a person applies for life insurance. They go through underwriting. The life insurance company makes an offer of life insurance according to that application. The client typically says yes. They take delivery of that policy. They now own life insurance. Most often, the individual owner of the policy is also the individual insured on the policy. So I might own a policy where I am the insured so that when I pass, my beneficiary is going to get paid, right? There can be cases where the owner and the insured are different people, right? You might insure your wife, you might insure your kids, right? You might insure anybody in whom what the industry calls as an insurable interest, meaning that if this person were to pass away, you're going to suffer some loss, right? So obviously for yourself, your insurable interest is infinite because if you go, you lose everything, right? So a lot of people start there, as they should, as the industry wants them to. So most people who are starting will self-insure, and then they own this policy. And this policy is a unilateral contract, right? It's the individual's private asset. It says that if the owner does certain things, then the party on the other end of the contract, namely the life insurance company, must do other things. So if I pay premium, the life insurance company must guarantee that a death benefit will be paid, and other things as well. So if I pay, if I pay a certain kind of premium, then not only will I have this death benefit, but I will have cash value or equity or capital, the monetary value of an asset, right? Life insurance is an asset. It has a value, a monetary value that it's called cash value. This cash value, therefore, is capital. Right? And the life insurance company guarantees this cash value. In other words, they're saying the life insurance company is saying to an individual, look, you got this policy, you own it, you're paying premium, there's a death benefit, great. But look, if you never want to see us again and you don't want this death benefit to get paid when you pass away, that's fine. You can surrender this contract. You can give it back to us and we'll pay you for it. We'll pay you the cash value. We'll pay you what the death benefit is worth today, right? In technical terms, cash value is the net present value of the death benefit. Death benefit is nothing but a future cash flow. Future cash flows have present values. In life insurance terms, that future cash flow is a death benefit, and its present value is called cash value or cash surrender value. Okay, so the life insurance company says, look, we promise that if you don't want to see us again, we'll pay you your cash value. But we would prefer that you not leave. We would prefer that you stay a client and that you continue to pay premium, right? Any business wants to maintain a revenue source. No kidding. All right. So the company says, look, rather than surrender your contract back to us, what you could do instead is if you need money, we'll just lend it to you. In fact, we'll lend you any amount of money through what's called a policy loan, a loan against the cash value, against the death benefit in your policy. And you can go use that money for whatever you want. And in fact, we'll even say that the borrower, the policy owner, you can control the debt. And by the way, for this loan, you don't have to apply for it. You just tell us when you want it. We'll give it to you. You can use it for what you want. There are no use restrictions. You can repay us when you want, if you want. Because by the way, if you take out a loan and you don't repay us during your lifetime, well, eventually God's going to call you home. And at that point, a death benefit's going to get paid. And if you have an outstanding policy loan balance at that time, well, we'll just subtract that indebtedness plus interest from your death benefit. So it's all good. The life insurance company knows they're going to get paid. Consequently, you control the debt. Repay it when you want, if you want, use it for whatever you want. By the way, loans are loans. They are not income. And so a loan transaction, as anybody who's ever borrowed money knows, that is not a taxable cash flow. So wait, I can build up a whole bunch of cash value. I can build a whole bunch of capital in a private asset that I own and control, the value of which is going to grow uninterrupted for the rest of my life at an increasing rate every year. And I have the contractual authority, remember, unilateral contract, I have the contractual authority to borrow against that rising cash value to use for what I want when I want. Nelson used to say, everybody should be in two businesses. Your main profession and the banking function. You should do whatever you're going to do. And you alluded to earlier that a lot of libertarians don't have a lot of money. And there's a great, I will call it populist, like grassroots movement within libertarianism, led by people like Jeff Deist, who runs the Mises Institute, who's and Tom Woods now with his School of Life that was announced recently, where there's a growing emphasis on going out in the world and using your God-given skills and abilities to go serve others, to then generate an income, to enjoy a life. And that's to be applauded, right? And that's what people as libertarians who want to practice what we preach should be doing. And then when we go do that and we do earn an income, we should, Nelson used to call it Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is the idea that expenses rise to meet income. James has tweaked that a bit. He will say that in America, expenses rise to exceed income, right? That's called being in debt, underwater. That is the American tendency. So you have a responsibility to yourself and to your family and to the generations you'll never meet to conquer Parkinson's law, to spend less than you make. And then it's a question of, okay, what do I do with that money? What do I do with my savings? What do I do with my withheld income, right? Income that I make that I don't spend. What do I do with that? Well, in America, what a lot of people do is they get in bed with the government through what are called tax qualified plans. 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roth IRAs, and on and on. And I don't have a government permission slip to give investment advice, so this is not investment advice. You want investment advice, go get somebody who has one of those government permission slips. It's not me. But I am an economist, so I get to tell you what I think from an economic point of view. And the idea that we're going to get in bed with the government to plan for our financial future when we're most fragile, when we may most need it. As a libertarian, I struggle to accept that, and everybody's familiar with these tax qualified plan rules. Once the money's in, you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half. If you do, there's a 10% penalty. If it's anything other than a Roth IRA, there's going to be income taxes. By the way, this money is invested in the stock market, probably in what's called a target date fund, which is an algorithmically traded fund. What could go wrong? What could go wrong with a computer program designed by Wall Street to control your future capital? What could go wrong? Okay, but that's where the money is for a lot of people, right? There was a recent law, I think it was 2006, the Pension Act. I think it was under Biden, of all people, where previously you had to opt in to contributions to a tax qualified plan, and that's been changed. You now have to opt out of your tax qualified plan. So unless you've done that, you're contributing to a tax qualified plan if you're an employer, if you're a W-2 employee. And again, we go back to the economic point of view. Austrians, libertarians, Austro-libertarians should be familiar with the business cycle, right? The business cycle, recessions, depressions, booms and busts, right? This is a natural, predictable outcome of fractional reserve banking. So long as we have fractional reserve banking, there will be a business cycle. What's that mean for me personally? That means that who knows when it comes time to start drawing from your tax qualified plan, whether we will be in the middle of a recession, shortly before one, shortly after one. Who knows? You don't. The advisor doesn't. The company that sold you the product doesn't. And the talking heads on TV don't know either. Right? Oh, and by the way, what are tax rates going to be in the future? I don't know, but probably higher. Right? You go online, look at the history of tax rates. It's a northeastern line up and to the right. Okay. You know, the conventional financial advisory community likes to say, oh, look, when you're older, you're not going to make as much money as you do now. So you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket. So your future tax expenses won't be as much as they are now. Consequently, you won't need as much income at that point. I mean, I have a bookshelf here full of fiction books. And that is a better fictional story than anybody could ever write. And no wonder it comes from Wall Street. I mean, I digress a bit, but that's what most people are doing. And that's just one passive cash flow late in life is just one instance, one manifestation, one common manifestation of the need of and use for capital. There's others, right? You're running a campaign right now to release a video to raise capital. It's a use of capital. Right? We all have, everybody in our own lives, we all have buying cars, buying houses. Before the show, we were talking, I want to go get a house. Got to pay for that. It's a need for capital, right? We all have this problem. Nelson thought, and I think that need for capital should be privatized. Bob Murphy and his partner, Carlos Lauer, wrote a book called How Privatized Banking Really Works, where they get into some of the economics of the infinite banking concept. Anyway, huge digression. You asked what it really looks like. So people buy life insurance. They pay premium. They pay a lot of premium, right? Premium is a contribution to capital. How much capital do you want? I don't know. As much premium as you can pay. How much premium should you pay? Well, that's that's the outcome of a proper advisory conversation, right? So again, this is me. I can't speak for other agents. Everybody knows that the commissioned life insurance agent is the spawn of Satan. I get it, right? No one wants to talk to a commissioned salesperson, even though we're all ostensibly capitalists. I get it. But at the end of the day, I can't talk for other agents, but I can talk for myself. You should go through a thorough advisory conversation where you're discussing your financials, you're discussing your goals, you're discussing cash flows, you're learning to think like a banker, you're learning to think about future cash flows, you're learning to think in terms of capital. And the Nelson used to say that if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. A good agent should help you understand what's going on in a particular life insurance contract. This video is going to be up forever. Okay, so in 2043, whatever the life insurance industry looks like at that point, you need to know what's going on at that time and how the contract works at that time. Right? We need to talk about tax consequences. We need to talk about how to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. We need to talk about worst case scenario things. What if everything goes wrong? I don't have any income. What if I can't pay premium? Oh my gosh, it's okay. I tell people that whole life built correctly and as a result of a proper advisory conversation is extremely hard to break. I mean, you really have to try to break it and hurt yourself. Again, speaking only of my process and my clients. I don't know what goes on with other agents, but there's a lot of great agents out there. Don't get me wrong. And many of them are practitioners of the Nelson Nash Institute practitioner program. But yeah, so that's how it works. You own life insurance. Nelson used to say, this is all ridiculously simple. Once we make the paradigm shift and choose to opt out of the fractional reserve banking system and decide to take control and ownership over the banking function, it's really simple. You pay a lot of premium, you build a lot of cash value, and you control the banking function, right? This sounds weird to people because no one's in that position, right? We've been bred, indoctrinated, grown up in a system where we naturally outsource, delegate, abdicate control of the banking function to the commercial banking system, and we don't think twice about it. And so that's why this feels weird. And I get that. And everybody's got their learning curve. Don't get me wrong. It took me time. Bob tells a story. He had to read the book like 8 times before it finally clicked. He would challenge Nelson and challenge Carlos. I'm not speaking out of school. He talks about this in public. So everybody has a learning curve, and no big deal. Our thinking process always develops. Nelson talks about the arrival syndrome, right? You can't teach a man anything who knows everything. And so you never want to arrive in knowledge. And, I was just talking yesterday with James, and he just blew my mind with a whole other particular kind of sort of niche insurance strategy. So we're all always learning. We're all always catching up, both intellectually and educationally, but also in terms of our finances. Look, your parents' should have done this. Dividend paying whole life insurance is older than this country. So this capital generation process could have been started long ago. It wasn't, right? Best time to plant a shade tree is 25 years ago. Next best time is right now. Yeah. So it's a process, but you live life and pay a whole lot of premium and enjoy being your own banker.
It reminds me a lot too, I think, so that people might more readily resonate with is the idea of renting versus owning a home in a sense. You understand, I think a lot of people have more experience with like, oh yeah, you rent an apartment, but you don't have anything to show for it at the end. The money goes to the people who provide you the apartment. Of course, there's benefits to that too, whatever they're taking care of things, maintain things, but you understand that there's no capital there to leverage. It's paid and that's it. And when the contract's up, you're done. And it's the same kind of concept saying, oh, okay, well, if you have a home, you have something that you could put money toward, and then that could pay off for you in different ways, whether later on you take out a loan against the home with the lien, or you do something with it, productively, the home itself, like you maybe have an Airbnb, or you do something with it, like offer goods and services. Right, podcast studio, right? You write some taxes off, but you can understand, I think, more readily for a lot of people, the idea of, oh, okay, a home has more opportunities for me to leverage it for my productive value. And that's all it is when it comes to, I think, the infinite banking concept here, is that it's just a means that people already were looking at in terms of thinking of, oh yeah, I got a family. If I die, something bad happens, I got to take care of them, right? My kids, I got to, pay for them to live and eat, my, wife and stuff like that, or vice versa. It's an important thing that a lot of people start to think of seriously when they realize, oh, okay, this could happen, right? But then it's like, oh, okay, well, why just pay someone money to have potentially nothing out of it? This changes that paradigm, and it says, hey, it doesn't have to just be, here's a big premium, and yeah, well, maybe you're not going to see anything from that. At least it's like, oh, okay, now I have an opportunity that I can leverage that for credit when needed, and in a much less risky environment. And if something drastic does happen, at least you have some type of cash out value that you can get money from the policies, that you can, renege the contract and give it back. At least you have something to show for it, as opposed to just nothing. Right. And that's that whole, I think, paradigm shifting thing, is it's like, okay, if you're already in this mindset of, okay, I do need to make sure that, I'm taking care of, my loved ones are taken care of in the event of the tragic thing. How can I maximize that? And of course, increase your productive capacities. So I think that's really what it boils down to for, the concept. And I think that the more people start to see that and take the Austrian thinking and say, okay, well, how do we meld that with some real world application? It's kind of a beautiful thing. It makes you think, what else could be done in that realm,
Yeah, it's the infinite banking concept for a reason, because once it clicks, the possibilities really are infinite. Your point about equity in a home is very well taken. The vast majority of Americans' capital is in their primary residence, in a home they own. And yes, that you can generate equity in a home. And that's what we're talking about, right? In fact, we're talking about doing that like on steroids. Like, okay, if it's good to have equity in a home, well, then it's good to have equity. It's something about the home that we partake. It's the equity we care about. It's the access to money that we care. It's the capital we care about. And so if it's good in a home, well, then maybe there's a way to do it even better. I have a blog. I think I've written more on the infinite banking concept than anybody anywhere online. And my blog is ryandgriggs.medium.com. So Medium is a social media platform for writers, essentially, and that's where I blog a lot. And I have an article called The Perfect Mortgage, where I compare the idea of systematically accumulating capital and dividend paying whole life in the terms of a mortgage. There's problems with it's better than nothing. Some capital is better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with owning a home. But there are problems from a pure capitalization perspective with doing so in a home. For one thing, the place can burn down. Okay. And the value is uncertain. In fact, in a fractional reserve banking environment, it's hyper uncertain, right? Just ask people who have lived through 2008. My grandmother lost 50% of the value of her home in 2008. It took 10 years for that value just to get back to where it was, right? Not talking about growth. We're talking about getting back to 2008 levels, so uncertainty in the future value of the collateral. You mentioned being able to borrow against the equity with maybe a line of credit or a home equity line of credit. I don't know if you've seen in the news lately, but major banks, I think Wells Fargo is one of them, have announced that they're just not going to do home equity lines of credit anymore. Nelson writes in his book, he calls it the golden rule. Those with the gold make the rules. And so if those with the gold, namely the commercial bankers, decide they don't want to lend to you because they don't like your particular form of equity, or they don't like you, then that equity you've generated in that home is useless. We can even get more conceptual. It's like, who late in their life wants to give a commercial banker, wants to give Wall Street a collateral assignment to the place they live in? I want to do that about as much as I want to go jump on a grenade. Okay. Like, no, thank you. I understand. Like, look, most people don't have a whole lot of cash value. Most people can't just take a policy loan and pay cash to buy a home. Most people have to go through the mortgage process. I don't have enough cash value to go out tomorrow and buy a home for cash. Okay. I'm going to go through the mortgage process. I was talking about this earlier with a new client of mine. The idea is that this is a process, right? You get yourself on a track to where eventually you don't have to depend upon the conventional fractional reserve, fraudulent, counterfeit, inflationary banking system. So that when we're down the road in the future, we're not given a collateral assignment or doing one of these vile reverse mortgages. I understand some people have to do a reverse mortgage because that's the only access to capital they have. But all a reverse mortgage does is interrupts the intergenerational capital transfer process, right? That house, when that elderly person passes, is going to go to the bank. It's not going to go to the kids, right? And then you get these movie actors on TV talking about how, it's a great financial innovation. Yeah, just like all the other Wall Street financial innovations that have been just such a great help to the American consumer. What a joke. But,
right.
Yeah.
I think you make a great point, though. Yeah, that uniquely, the infinite banking concept here allows you to build that capital and leverage it without risking other important things, especially things that are subject to government regulation, intervention, and market manipulation with the Federal Reserve. So absolutely. I mean, the more that you can diversify as well in these realms, I think, the better, of course, and so I think that people who have already done a few things and are looking for a way to not get too caught up in one, investment strategy should definitely take a look at the infinite banking concept and consider how they can further diversify what it is they already have.
James likes to say that infinite banking puts jet engines on whatever you're already doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of the reception to what you've talked about in terms of the infinite bank concept, and then of course, I think most interestingly, Menger's later work, how has that been received among people who are of the the Austrian bent, especially in the higher levels of academia, and or people are promoting it from a I guess you could say not officially academic, but tangentially academic view online and things like that?
Yeah, your question assumes that it has been received at all. I've tried. I'm not going to name the names of the publications that I've tried to get it published at, but I've been rejected 3 times from organizations and publications that you would think would leap on this. I've been given various reasons. It's too long, right? Academic journal article is 52 pages. Translated with the translator's note is about 65 pages long. Academic journal articles nowadays are in the 15 to 25 page range. It's fairly arcane. We're not commenting on like current events, so it's not super sexy to a lot of people. Very sexy to me, but others don't share that view. So there may be a lack of a thematic fit. And I'll still try. Braun, the professor I mentioned in Germany, has made some recommendations at journals I've yet to try. So I'll try there. But, at the end of the day, by the way, I don't care. Okay. If it go, who I care about is my clients. I care about their financial situations. Okay. Now, if the rest of the community wants to get on board, great. I encourage that. I would love that. Bob would love, I think the reason Bob I'm not going to speak for Bob, but he's put himself in a professional capacity that's deeply engaged with IBC. Next week, here we are talking February or mid-February of 2022. The last week of this month will be the annual Nelson Nash Institute IBC think tank. It's kind of our annual conference. Bob will be there. Bob's speaking there. He's involved. He's engaged. And so Nelson was personally mentored by Leonard Read, co-founder of the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, for 42 years. Okay, a quarter. I don't know if this is still the case. Nelson passed away March 27 of 2019. During his lifetime, I knew, because he told me, that a quarter of the proceeds from the sale of his book, 25%, went to the Mises Institute and Foundation for Economic Education. I forget the name of the group that the Mises Institute calls it. It's like their top 100 people. Nelson Nash was a member of that. It's like the Ron Paul Society or the Hazlitt Society, whatever the group name is. People can look it up. He was in that. Leonard, he knew Henry Hazlitt. Nelson Nash knew Henry Hazlitt. But Leonard Read was in New York when FEE was up on Hudson. It's a hyphenated name. I forget it, but it was in New York. Nelson Nash was in Birmingham, Alabama. Nelson would fly Leonard Read down to Birmingham to do private seminars with his clients. Nelson Nash considered himself an Austrian economist. There are talks, few of them, but there are talks of Nelson online where he's talking about his relationship with Leonard and his history with Austrian economics. Nelson considered himself an Austrian economist. And he really wanted, I deeply would love for the libertarian world to get on board. A very common objection is, well, dividend paying whole life has cash value, and cash value is denominated in US dollars, and the US dollar is going to collapse, don't you know? So why would I build up a bunch of US dollar denominated capital? To which I say, I don't care what the money is. I don't. All I care is I have more capital over time. Right? Again, capital is just the monetary value of assets, regardless of what the money is. Life insurance is sold in Canada, by the way. They don't use the US dollar. They use the Canadian dollar. They still sell life insurance. People still build cash value. Whole life originated in the UK. Okay, they didn't use the dollar. So it's not dependent upon the dollar. And I've often say, look, I don't care if you denominate the values of dividend paying whole life insurance in pebbles, as long as I get more than what I pay in, and look, if the currencies have changed, and sure, maybe they will change during our lifetime. I don't know. I don't care, because when they do, assets, including dividend paying whole life, will just be redenominated in the new money. Not a problem. By the way, we only use companies that have been around for at least 100 consecutive years. So, people think of that the entire financial system is so fragile, and a lot of it is, but dividend paying whole life, or mutual life insurance companies are not. They paid dividends through World War I, World War II, Great Depression, Vietnam, Korea, closing of the gold window, 99, 08, still paying dividends today. I own a company that paid a dividend for 117 consecutive years. You know, another one of my policies is with a company that's, I think it's like 145 years. You know, these are very stable, long-lasting entities that have survived a lot and would survive. I don't think there's an economic rationale why they wouldn't in the event of a major currency change. But again, dollar denominated and its whole life. There are people, I wrote an article about Gary North, very prominent, and was a mentor to a lot of the professors and Austrians and major libertarians that we know of now. And he hated whole life insurance. Oh, he wrote an article, I think it was in 2016. And by the way, no disrespect, I believe I don't know if he's passed away, but he's older. So I mean, no disrespect to Dr. North, but his article on names Nelson Nash by name, talks about the infinite banking concept, talks about whole life, was just brutal and personal. So on my Medium blog, there's a response to it. So it's, there's a lot of historical circumstantial reasons why IBC has not been adopted in the Austrian and Austro-libertarian world. I think that's changing. I talk about this obviously a lot. I talk about it on the podcast a lot. A lot of my clients, whether they like it or not, are hearing this. So they're beginning to, I hate this word, but wake up. Ugh. They're starting to wake up to what is going on in the financial system, and that they're realizing they have this opportunity to control the banking function. So it's changing. Carlos Lara likes to talk about the 10%. You don't need to convince everybody of anything. You just need an irate minority kind of deal. The 10%. And that may be true. It might be 10, it might be lower, it might be higher. I keep going back to this, at the end of the day is I care about my clients. If someone's willing to reconsider their financial paradigm, oh my goodness, we can go to town. And it'll be good for you. It'll be good for your family. I want to say too, by the way, this is not like a paid advertisement. There's none of this. You wanted to talk, and I'm happy to talk about it. But because I want to say that though, because I've been asked, hey, here's an opportunity for you to pay us $5,000 so you can get a 30-second spot on a radio show. And I'm like, go fly a kite in traffic. Okay. I don't want anything to do with that. And I don't market. I don't have a marketing budget. I don't do cold calls. I don't do the spam emails. I talk and I write. That's it. And, I really, and I sell life insurance. I'm a commissioned life insurance agent. Yeah, no kidding. But my goal Nelson changed my life and the lives of hundreds of thousands of other people. Like the amount of insurance that has gone in force, the amount of cash value that's been generated, the amount of death benefit that's been paid because of policies he put in force, or policies that people he taught that went in force, or policies of other people that they taught went in force. I mean, he's had a major impact. And, if I can do one good thing while God's let me walk around, it might as well be to promote his legacy. And, if you watch the podcast, you'll find that I really, the rest of the industry really pisses me off sometimes. Because if you go online, and if people watch this and they do go online, you're going to find a lot of people who know how to hit the letters I, B, and C on the keyboard, but the words Nelson Nash just can't escape their mouth for some reason. And that does viscerally irritate me. It is Nelson Nash's infinite banking concept. And, but online financial entertainment is what it is. And a lot of people will take something that is much bigger than just a marketing scheme and use it as just that, which is sad. But, Nelson used to say, be the light, just be the light. Don't play around in the dark. Just be in the light and, be an example. I don't think I'm much of an example to people. Maybe I am, but if people like what I say, there's a lot more where this came from. And it's okay to go take action. A lot of people will point you to a lot of things. Other people have written other books. You go on Amazon, you look at a lot of agents have taken what Nelson wrote and they put together some marketing copy. They bind it together so it looks like a book, and then they sell it. And they say, oh, you want to learn about infinite banking? Here's my book, which is a rehash, what James would call a bastardization of what Nelson said. And I say, yeah, do that, or go to the source. In anything you do, Austrians read Mises and we read Rothbard. I read Menger. You go to the source. Christians read the Bible. You go to the source. And the source of the infinite banking concept is Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's, what you're doing in terms of educating people is an important aspect to that element. And it kind of reminds me in a sense of Peter Schiff and his talking about what was happening with the markets and how he tied that in, of course, with, his own form of hedge against inflation, with gold investment. And again, I think that that's probably the most powerful way that you can reach people is to educate them on what's going on economically, show the predictive power of understanding, hey, the government's doing this thing. So by the way, don't be surprised when the inflation hits. Don't be surprised, when things start to collapse because the government shut down all the borders and all the ability to, to travel and trade. Like, you can't just stop one part of the economy and think that everything's going to be, hunky dory, right? When you get to explain this to people and see the ramifications, I think it really is inspiring to get them to be like, oh, okay, wow, okay, you really do understand what's going on economically. You're really showing me how the specifics in government action and malinvestment with Fed interest rates manipulation, how that's really affecting them, and then being able to talk about ways to help capitalize. And not saying that in a bad way, like in terms of a nefarious way, just say capitalize as in capitalize financially, literally in the face of these threats, economically from the government. Otherwise, I think it's a really important thing to communicate to people and really is an attractive way to get people to realize sustainably what this is doing for their lives. And I think as you know before, right, if you're worried about the dollar collapsing that degree, there's going to be much bigger problems than your life insurance policy at that point. If you're at that level, there's going to be much bigger things. And that's, where your diversified investments come in, in seeds, guns, and ammo and things like that. If it's that level, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to be fighting for survival.
All purchases are financed. It's just a question of whether we're paying cash and giving up dividends and interest we otherwise could have earned, or whether we borrow money and pay interest to somebody else and generate a dividend paid to somebody else. It's just a matter of whether you want to be in control of that or not. I have nothing against gold. Believe it or not, I have nothing against cryptocurrency. People think I do. I don't. It's just not a money, but that's a whole digression. I have nothing against that. I love precious metals, lead and brass. And those purchases have to be financed. Turns out you got to pay money. And the source of money is capital. Right? Either capital you have in your hands, cash you have in your hands that you're going to liquidate and give up, or cash you get through a borrowing process that you either control and own, or a borrowing process that you don't. That's it. People, a lot of the stuff online is, comparative. Well, I can do IBC, or I can get into the market, or I can do real estate investing, or I can buy gold, or I can get guns and ammunition, or. No. This isn't an either or thing. This is a yes and thing. Like, I'd like to have a lot of capital and I'd like to go buy the gold. I'd like to go buy the cryptocurrency. You do both. It's not exclusionary. And that's why I say IBC is not an investment strategy. We're not investing. Investing involves giving up control over capital. That's the whole idea. Right? We're going to give up capital to somebody else who's going to generate a return either in the form of a cash flow or a capital gain or both. Okay. We're giving up control of them. That's the whole point. But with a capitalization strategy, we're doing the opposite. We're retaining and maximizing and strengthening our control over and access to capital so that we can go do with it what we want. A lot of people have a very narrow view of what it means to invest. It's that series of 10 options that you get with the tax qualified plan with the employer. Okay. And the reason we have such a narrow view of investment that really excludes things like entrepreneurship and doing things for yourself, is because the vast majority of people are undercapitalized. The more well capitalized you are, Nelson used to talk about this, the relationship between capital and opportunity. The more capital you have access to and control over, the landscape of opportunity, both entrepreneurial and investment, transforms. If I know at the back of my mind I can get to $500,000, well, now maybe the house across the street is an investment opportunity. Now maybe I need to get a podcast studio and some equipment and start talking. Maybe I need to go do whatever it is that I'm passionate and skilled at doing. And, people are hard on themselves, inappropriately so in my view. But it's not their fault. They've been brainwashed by Wall Street. You are your most profitable investment. You. Your labor, your work, whether you're an employee, whether you're working for yourself, independent contractor, business owner, I don't care. You are your most profitable investment. And the thing that will allow you to exercise your abilities to a greater scale, that necessary ingredient, is called capital. Right? The more money we have access to, the more we can go do. Look at hyper wealthy people. Look at Bezos. The dude's tearing down a freaking bridge so he can drive a yacht through it. You know, why can he do that? He has a lot of capital, right? And that is the same principle, of course, a wild scale, but same principle applies to everybody else. You know, why don't more people think of raw land purchasing and development as an investment opportunity? Well, duh, I don't have the money. No, you don't have the capital. And you don't have the capital in order to go and buy the land for cash, let's say, because you don't have a capitalization strategy. Why would you expect anything else? You know? So if people would become, well, a lot of the times people will start IBC. They're like, okay, I have my policy. I'm doing this. How do I make it better? What do I do? How do I know how to? And it's like, take a deep breath and pay a premium, right? It's okay to just systematically build capital. Nelson used to say that for the well-capitalized, opportunity will hunt you down. It's in his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. And it will. And by the way, well-capitalized people know this. And that's why well-capitalized people don't tell others that they're well-capitalized. Because people who have a lot of money know they'll get trounced. Oh my God, I want this, I want that, I want that. Yeah, so they shut up about it, right? And hey, it's their business, it's their capital. It should be private. And in IBC, it is.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate your taking time to educate people today on the infinite banking concept and Nelson Nash's history, your history with going back, way, as you said, 10 years ago, just moving boxes at the VC's Institute all the way to now, actually helping people apply it in their real lives. And I just think more people should listen to you and what you have to say, tune into your podcast, read your articles, because in doing so, you're actually just going to become a more informed libertarian. You're going to be a more informed Austrian thinker. It's going to help you plan for the future, essentially, and think about ways that you can, strategize for yourself. So I really just, thank you so much for being generous to come on and talk with me and share it with everybody today. Where can people find you to keep following up with what you are doing? I know you had mentioned your blog, but where else can they check you out at?
I'll tell you that, but I have to say too, like you mentioned at the very start, I had the privilege and honor to attend your wedding. So I'll say on air too, congratulations to you and to Michelle. It was a privilege to be there. I'm very grateful to be your friend. Very grateful that we met again years ago, like too many years ago, in the Beltway. Ironically, a story for another time. But you've been a great friend. I love what you're doing with the voluntarists. I love what you're doing with the comic books. I love what you're doing with all your platforms. Like I posted on Facebook, I'm like, you're one of the few that's managed to do, because I know you do in-person events, like at the gun range. I know all sorts of in-person events. And so you've crossed that digital physical divide that so many people cannot surmount, sort of culture. And you've done it, and you've done it without becoming a hack, without doing the marketing shit and the political stuff. You've just stayed true. You've done your own vision, and you've been very creative in doing so. So I commend you for that. And yeah, if people want to find more about me, they can go to Griggs, Griggs, Griggs Capital Strategies.com. That's my website. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can go to YouTube and search for Banking with Life. That's on James Nethery, my business partner, James Nethery, like Weathery, but with an N, James Nethery's YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about the Nelson Nash Institute, you should go to infinitebanking.org, just like it sounds. There's the practitioner finder there. You can look for agents like me. Well, maybe not agents like me. There probably isn't an agent like me, but you can find other people who are involved in that program. And you can order Nelson's book there as well, both of his books. You can also order a 6-hour recording of Nelson Nash's seminar that he's quite famous for. Of course, he's passed away now, so you can't attend in person, but you can get a recording of it at infinitebanking.org. So GriggsCapitalStrategies.com, my Medium page, which you link to, RyanDGriggs.medium. I hope that's the URL. I think it is. It's close enough. Infinitebanking.org and Banking with Life on YouTube. And that should be enough to keep you occupied for a very long time.
Awesome. Well, hopefully everybody goes and checks it out today and gets a sense of what he's doing and seeing where this whole movement is going in terms of rethinking financial strategies and capitalization. Next week, I do have some interesting guests come on as well, just to give you a little heads up. I think I have Mitch Connor on Monday and Reed Coverdale on Wednesday. So some more fun stuff. So check back in next week on Monday and Wednesday. There'll be some announcements about that. And of course, I'm excited to have Ryan back on sometime in the future. We'll catch up some more on where he's at in his work and hopefully hearing more good things, people being more receptive to him sharing what he's discovered with Menger's work and how he's applied it. So, all right. Take care, everybody. See y'all later. See you next time.
ZeroState with Jack Lloyd.